Hello and good morning and happy Tuesday English 3 honors. Welcome to our digital classroom and our first digital lecture. Today we're going to be working in our ebook on pages 177 and 178. So go ahead and go to page 177, or you can just follow along with me and then open up your textbook when we're done. So as you know from yesterday, we're going to be looking at American Romantic authors, and the first one we're going to be taking a look at is Walt Whitman. So Whitman was not born into a prosperous family. His father was a house builder, and Whitman himself was one of 9 children. And although he was a voracious reader, young Walt did not have much formal education. He began work as a printer at the age of 12, and at 17 was teaching in a one-room schoolhouse in Long Island, New York. Some of you are already 17, so can you imagine being a teacher right now? Later in life, Walt eventually became a journalist, and then he became the poet that we know him as today. So Whitman's poetry was revolutionary, as you heard in yesterday's video. His free verse broke with all poetic conventions of the time, rejecting rhyme, regular rhythm, and conventional stanzas. Leaves of Grass, the collection of poems on which he worked for much of his life, was a highly controversial work because of its dominant themes of sex and sexuality. At one point, Whitman had a job as a clerk in Washington, D.C. with the Department of the Interior, but when James Harlan, the Secretary of the Interior, found out that Whitman was the author of Leaves of Grass, he fired him. But on the other hand, Whitman had a powerful supporter in Ralph Waldo Emerson, the influential New England poet and philosopher. Whitman's reputation among other writers became so great that they occasionally sent him purses of money to help him continue writing. Nowadays, Leaves of Grass is considered one of the central works of American poetry. Today we're going to be reading from Song of Myself, which is a poem in 52 sections that appears in Whitman's Leaves of Grass collection. So go ahead and turn to page 178 in your ebook if you haven't already, or just keep following along with me. Sometimes it's helpful to hear a poem read out loud while you follow along, so I'm going to go ahead and read this poem out loud for you now. So if you can't get enough of my beautiful voice, just keep playing the video, but if you would like to read this yourself, I still recommend reading it out loud, but you can go ahead and pause the video and then skip forward about a minute to join us for some discussion. Okay, so this is section 1 of Song of Myself. I celebrate myself and sing myself, and what I assume you shall assume. For every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you. I loaf and invite my soul. I lean and loaf at my ease, observing a spear of summer grass. My tongue, every atom of my blood, formed from this soil, this air, born here of parents, born here from parents the same, and their parents the same. I, now 37 years old, in perfect health begin, hoping to cease not till death. Creeds and schools in abeyance, retiring back a while, sufficed at what they are, but never forgotten. I harbor for good or bad. I permit to speak at every hazard. Nature without check, with original energy. Okay, welcome back. So I hope you enjoyed section 1 of Song of Myself. And before you move on to your next task, which will be answering the 3 questions at the bottom of the page, I wanted to point out a few things in this poem. So first, as we discuss the poem, you might notice that some of the line numbers are off. In my teacher edition of the textbook, it has the poem broken into stanzas and the line numbers are accurate. I don't know why yours is not broken into stanzas and why the line numbers aren't accurate, but just kind of count off the lines because I'll be referring to some line numbers, so just do the best that you can. I'll also highlight lines as I'm talking about them so you know where I'm at. If you'd like to take any notes on what I'm talking about, the e-reader allows you to do that, so you can highlight something and then it'll say add note. And if you click on that, you can go ahead and change the color, or you can underline it, whatever you want to do, and then you can even add some extra commentary if you would like here. So we can go ahead and click out of that because we won't need that, and it saved it anyway. So we're going to delete that. Okay, so we'll just delete that note. So that's how you take notes in here. Now remember, in yesterday's video and in the discussion that I just gave you, Walt Whitman writes in free verse. So he doesn't have the traditional elements of poetry like rhyme, regular rhythm, and conventional stanzas, stanzas being those paragraphs that poems are divided into. But notice that the lines in this poem have a varying number of syllables. That's one of the things about his free verse. If you look at line number 4, we've got 7 syllables here, but line number 5 has 16 syllables. So the poem has its own kind of rhythm, but it doesn't have the traditional rhythm that we're used to. So did you also notice that when you were reading or when you were listening to me read that the first few lines almost seem to rhyme? If you look at these 3, let's read those again. I celebrate myself and sing myself, and what I assume you shall assume, for every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you. So this assume at the end of line 2 and this you at the end of line 3 have kind of a slant rhyme thing going on. It almost makes you think the poem is going to rhyme, and then the rest of it absolutely doesn't rhyme, except maybe like air and there. But other than that, there's really not a lot of rhyming going on in this poem. So also in those first 3 lines, I want you to look at the pronouns that Whitman is using. So he uses I a lot, and he also has myself, but then he also uses you to address the reader. So pay attention to that when you're answering number 1. Number 1 asks you to look at how the speaker establishes himself as an individual, but also as a representative for others. So pay attention to the pronouns in these first 3 lines. He's using a lot of I and myself, but he's also using a lot of you. So what is that doing? What is he saying in those first 3 lines of the poem? In the middle of the poem, we have our longest sentence. It starts here with my tongue, and it goes all the way down to death. So that's 4 lines of poem that is one sentence, one long comma-filled sentence. So Whitman brings up a lot of imagery in these lines too. He starts small with tongue and with atom, but then he gets broader, talking about parents, born here of parents, born here from parents the same, and their parents the same. So he starts talking about his lineage, his parents, his great-grandparents, or his grandparents, and then his great-grandparents, just back and back and back. So he starts small and then gets really broad. Number 2 down here is asking you about those lines specifically and the line length and the word arrangement and how that helps you to interpret the meaning of those lines. This question is a little tricky, but I know that you can figure it out. Really spend some time on these 2 lines here, but especially this whole sentence, this whole thing as a whole. And think beyond just the literal meaning of the words on the page. What is Whitman trying to say about life? About the connectedness of people. For number 3, we're going to be looking at the last few lines of the poem, these 4 lines here. Whitman refers to schools of thought that he has considered in the past and has now left behind. And question 3 asks you what the last line of the poem suggests about Whitman's poetic creed or his current personal system of belief. So reread that last line. Nature without check with original energy. Remember that Romantics really loved nature and believed in the power of nature over civilization. So what is this last line saying? What can we infer that Whitman believes about life and society? If you're having a hard time with this question in particular, you are in luck because you can click this close read button and it'll open up a new tab for you with a video of 2 readers breaking down those 4 lines together. They really break down everything line by line, phrase by phrase, and help you understand what Whitman is doing at the end of the poem here and what he means. So that'll be really helpful for you in answering question number 3. So don't worry if you're having a hard time with that one. Use that close read video. It's only a couple of minutes and it really helps you answer that question. So as you go to answer this question, or these questions, you can actually do it right in the textbook. You don't even have to open up a Word document or write anything down. You can just click on this Q button and it opens up these text boxes for you. And then when you click this arrow, it brings you to the other questions. I know the numbers are off again. They all say number 1. I don't know why, but there's 3 questions here for you, so make sure you get all 3 of those. And notice at the top of each question it says to cite text evidence, so support your responses with evidence from the poem. So each of your answers should include your own thought, but they should also include quotes from the poem, words, phrases, lines. So you should have a mix of your own thoughts and Whitman's poem to help you answer these questions. Make sure you're quoting something and not just using your own words. Make sure you have support as well as your response. And if you're struggling with this poem, I'm getting ahead of myself. One more thing about these text boxes. Make sure you click the My Notebook checkbox option so that it saves to my notebook. So you want like a little check mark right here so it saves to your notebook so that I can view your work and so that you can also go back and find your work more easily. It'll save it over here to your notes tab so you have all of your questions that you've answered. So just make sure you click that box. That's really important. Okay, now moving on to, if you are struggling with this poem, if you're having a really hard time, you can also check out the link that I included with your assignment in Microsoft Teams. It'll take you to genius.com where we have Song of Myself by Walt Whitman. And then you'll notice that everything is highlighted here, and when you click on these, it gives you an annotation. So Genius is kind of like Wikipedia, where just people like you and me can come in and write annotations about a poem. So the downside is you'll notice that some of them are unreviewed, so take those ones with a grain of salt, but you'll also see other ones that have multiple contributors and have been edited, so if they don't say unreviewed, then they're pretty reliable. This has a lot of great information about the poem, but it also gives you some context and gives you a little bit more information about the meaning behind what Whitman is saying here. It kind of helps you to break it down. So if you're struggling, that close reader video for those last 4 lines and this website with annotations for the whole poem will be really, really helpful to you. So go ahead and let me know if you have any questions as you're working through this. My office hours and the ways to contact me are posted in our general channel in our Teams. You can also email me, but you can also just start a chat with me in Teams, but just go to our channel and you'll see all of the information about when I'm available and how to reach me. I hope, as I said at the beginning, I hope that you all are doing well. I miss you all a lot, and just do the best you can with these questions, and we will pick back up tomorrow with another poem by Walt Whitman.